So, this is one of those titles that's going to require a bit of explanation. There's a collision of words, alternate titles, and variations in meaning that make this situation a bit more confusing than it had to be. Start out with, Raimais is the title of the original arcade game. I'm pretty sure that the second half of that title is supposed to be read as the English word maze, but there is an official release outside of Japan under the title Raimais, and so we're going to go with that. The Rai part of the title is probably referring to thunder or lightning, so you could render the arcade game's title as Thunder Maze. If you haven't heard of the arcade game Raimais, well, it's not a surprise, this one was not a success for Taito. For the home, they've changed Rai to Yu, and the character they use at the start of it means play or game. So here we have Play Maze. Yeah, I think the Disk System title's the worst one, even in Japanese. The concept of the game is that in the future, illegal races are held in holographic mazes. You're playing as Rika Midorikawa, leader of a biker gang called the Estrus Cats. And I know I did not misread or mistranslate that, because those two words are the only ones in English in this manual. Her brother took part in one of these races and lost, and as a result has been taken by the evil organization that runs them. Now she has to take part herself, with freedom for her and her brother on the line. Now even though the story said it was races, really this is a maze chase game. You have to complete 32 levels by collecting all of the dots in the maze and then getting to an exit. In a way it resembles Sega's classic arcade game Head On, but there's an enormous variety of mazes, and the opposing cars are a lot more complicated than the ones in that arcade game. Some of the dots you'll have to drive over twice in order to collect, and different colored dots are worth a different quantity of points. But since you have to collect all the dots anyways, the fact that yellow dots are worth the most doesn't really do anything. Points do earn you extra lives, but the difference between points for the different colored dots is so negligible it won't even make a significant difference there. Once you collect the final dot, all of the enemies will vanish and two passages will open up. Then you get your choice of going left or right, very similar to how the game progressed in Taito's Arkanoid 2. So although you have to clear 50 stages, there's actually 99 levels in the game. The first stage is always identical, and then there's 2 options for every one of the next 49. There's a few different kinds of enemies that you'll encounter in the maze, but the most important thing about them is that they all follow very regimented patterns. They all have rules that they follow to determine which way they go. It isn't especially difficult to figure out those rules and work out when it's safe to go for a row of dots. Your enemies aren't just other cars that will drive into you though. This one will become intangible from time to time, which will prevent you from destroying it, but will also prevent it from hurting you. And this one slows you down when you collide with it. And you have your own set of tools for dealing with the other racers. Sometimes when you collect a dot, an icon will be left behind. And collecting these icons will always help you. The boring ones are the extra lives, and the S that slows down all of the enemies. The L will give you an attack. Pressing the A button after you collect it will fire lasers that will destroy the other cars. Collecting the O will leave behind a gate which you can use to access a bonus stage. This is basically a hidden stage that's operating on a timer. And when the stage is over, or you get killed, or you run out of time, you restart the stage that you just left. And I do mean restart. You have to collect everything again, but this time the bonus warp doesn't appear. The C will collect all of the dots on the screen, so if any of your remaining dots required driving over them twice, then you'll still have to collect those. And finally, the B will just open the exits for you. There's 2 more stage hazards to be aware of. Mines will detonate shortly after you drive over them, so you'll need to make sure that you can get away fast. And doors will open and close, and if they close while you're in them, then you get crushed. Both of these can be used to destroy opposing cars, though controlling the timing for either is rather tricky. When enemy cars are destroyed, they come back exactly where they were destroyed about 10 seconds later. That delay is long enough that you can get a lot done while they're out of commission. You'll also spot warp points on the map that you can drive over and come out at the other side. These can only be used by players. enemy cars can't access them at all, and you can control what direction you drive off in once you finish spinning out of the hole. Yuu Maze is not a super difficult game, but to make up for that, there are no continues. You have to beat it all in one go. And even if you do clear level 50, to get the good ending for the game, you have to complete a QuickTime event. There's a bad ending if you don't react quickly enough during the ending cutscene. There are a couple more interesting features in Yuu Maze. First, a new addition for the console version is a 2-player simultaneous mode, and the arcade players had to take turns. There aren't a lot of maze chase games that let you play 2 players at the same time, so this is actually kinda cool. And don't worry, you can't run into each other. Finally, there's an edit mode where you can create your own stages. There's space for saving 5 different maze layouts on the disc. And in this situation, I'd recommend plotting out your maze on paper before you try to draw it in the game. The way that Yuu Maze handles the placement of walls is a little bit funny. It only tracks the top and left wall, so it will help to have a plan before you start out. Yuu Maze is a game that is hyper obscure in Japan. This probably isn't going to wind up being the most viewed video online about the game, but it's definitely going to be in the top 3. And I'm afraid nobody seems to want to share any opinions on it. And that's a shame because I think this is really good. It's a pretty ingenious spin on the maze chase genre, and it makes these stages into puzzles where you have to work out how to safely collect the dots more than how you can evade the enemies. Evasion is easy, you can see their patterns right there. But when you have to deal with a bunch of them, and get in and out of dead-end passages, or rush down long hallways before you get caught between them, the fact that you know which way a car is going to turn doesn't help you much. This is a fun spin on a genre that was pretty much gone by 1988. Despite a few stumbles, Taito has been bringing a lot of really good arcade ports to the Disk System, and it's unfortunate that we only have one more to go.